I'm seeing we have some attendees in. We have Mara, we have Russ. Welcome. We're just having a little casual conversation before we begin the formal event here. Welcome everybody. Thanks for joining us. And as this is going to be our first time trying this new platform, thanks for bearing with us for any technical issues that we may encounter at this meetup. But otherwise, we're very excited to share with you this new way of being present at the meetup. We've had a lot of feedback from all the participants, and there has been a lot of desire to have more networking and have more opportunities for networking. And so we hope that this sort of hybrid model will satiate kind of both sides of this. And we'll have the first formal part would be in the presentations. And then from here, we'll break off into a virtual sort of floor with virtual tables where you will be able to double click and join any table that you would like. The teams will have their own tables as well, and there will also be an Amii help desk as well on the first floor. So there will be plenty of space to network and chat and meet the team and ask any questions that you may have. So if everybody's okay, I'm happy to sort of, this will be sort of the clean break where I can start the recording for the YouTube video. So I could say hello and welcome, and thank you for joining us for this July edition of the Virtual AI Meetup. My name is Vanimiraq. I am the Marketing and Communications Associate here at Amii. And I am tuning in from Edmonton, Alberta. And I understand we have a bunch of folks across Canada, so feel free to chime into the chat. Let us know where you are. We can start the conversation here. And then as we kind of move on to the networking portion, we can continue the conversation. So for those of you who are joining us for the first time, welcome. And if you're joining us again for the AI Meetup, welcome back. The Alberta Machine Intelligence Institute, also known as Amii, is one of 3 centers of excellence as part of the Pan-Canadian AI strategy, with a history reaching back to decades of world-leading AI research and a training that has put us in a position to be global leaders in AI and ML. Whether you are involved in a business, or you are a student, or you're just looking to get more involved in the AI community, Amii has a whole host of programs available to you, and we would love to connect. So do reach out to us through amii.ca, and we also would love to hear from you at any time throughout this meetup, of course. So but a few housekeeping notes before we get started. This meetup will be recorded, so we will have the meetup, or at least the first presentation section of the meetup on our YouTube page. So the presentations will be accessible, and you will get to revisit them at your leisure after this meetup. And also wave to all the folks who are tuning into us internationally who aren't able to make the meetup and will be viewing this recording later. We also thank you for joining us again as we transition to this platform. Through Remo, we will have the opportunity to have some great presentations, and then break into the tables as mentioned. And most importantly, as we continue to improve the virtual events through each iteration, you can expect a short email with a survey. And so please let us know what went well, what didn't go well, what you would like to see in the future. The feedback really helps us out a lot, and feedback like the ones that we've received where people have desire to network more are ones that are kind of leading us into this path to make these experiences better and better each time. So housekeeping aside, we have 3 great teams presenting demos that have been shared at the AI4Good Lab Demo Day. We are incredibly excited to welcome the teams here to present to the community. There will be a quick Q&A portion available after each presentation. So any questions that you may have for our presenters, there will be a chance to have that Q&A at the tail end of each presentation. That said, there will also be time for questions when we break out of the tables. So if that sounds good for everyone, I say we jump into the content. So I would first like to welcome our first team of presenters from Team SoQuo. We have Joud, we have Ahana, Emily, and Debarati. Thanks for joining us today. Please join us, and we can get your slides set up.
Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Looking good.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, you can't see the tab. All right. Well, hi everyone. Today we're going to introduce you to SoQuo, a phone application that helps users understand and control the impact of social media on their mental health. In doing so, we will talk about the motivation behind SoQuo, its features, and our future vision for the app. According to Statista in 2019, 90% of US adults between the ages of 18 and 29 use social media, and we can only assume this percentage has risen even more due to the pandemic. This brings up the question, how does social media affect our mental health?
We'll consider this question with Lisa, a 24-year-old software developer. Like many of us, she's been quarantined for the last year or so, and her social media usage has gone up significantly. Lisa has also been feeling extremely anxious lately and often feels down. Her best friend suggested she find out what has been amplifying her anxiety. So Lisa researched. She found many studies that identified a strong link between heavy social media use and an increase in anxiety and other serious problems. The problem is, Lisa can't just eliminate social media from her life completely. She, like many of us, uses social media to keep up with the latest news, whether it be global news or her friends' news.
Besides, Lisa doesn't think the social media is the problem per se. Perhaps it's the constant bombardment of potentially sensitive or triggering information, and the not knowing what to expect or what topics to avoid. If only there was a way to know what to expect before opening an app, or even what topics have an impact on her mental health.
Meet SoQuo, our solution to Lisa's problems. SoQuo, which stands for Social Quotient, uses your Twitter home timeline and extracts all the topics from it in real time. It summarizes the tweets in two metrics. The feed sentiment metric, which tells you how much of your feed is positive, negative, and neutral, and the today's topic metric, that tells you the ratio of each topic on your overall Twitter feed, as well as your most likely associated emotion. SoQuo provides insights as well as warnings, and it acquires this data by asking the user how they felt about each topic they saw on their timeline after they closed a social media app. Since teenagers and young adults are the largest age groups who use social media, they would be our primary audience. Alongside that, people who suffer from mental illnesses would also find SoQuo very useful.
But how does SoQuo work? SoQuo scans your personal Twitter feed and runs two classifiers. The first classifier sorts each tweet into one of 18 different categories like beauty, fitness, music, and so on. And the second classifier returns the percentages of positive, negative, and neutral tweets. Next, we will talk about how the classifiers work.
First, we pre-process our Twitter data to get rid of any non-alphanumeric characters, such as emojis, hashtags, URLs, and punctuation. Next, our algorithm removes stop words, which are common words that carry very little useful information. So after they're filtered out, only unique words from each tweet remain. We then map these words to corresponding vector of real numbers. So if a word appears, we increase the number in its spot by 1. This is known as vectorization, and this entire process is known as bag of words. Finally, we apply the classification machine learning model of choice. In our case, we tried 5 different models and found that random forest yielded the best results.
Our random forest classifier achieved an accuracy of 87.4% when we used cross-validation. We then ran our machine learning models on 400 tweets retrieved real-time from Twitter. The topic classifier puts each tweet into one of the 18 different categories, but we only display the 7 most prevalent ones on the metric.
So how would Lisa use this app? Well, in these Figma mockups, you can see that when Lisa wakes up, she will get a notification to input her initial emotion. Then, when Lisa scrolls through Twitter, she'll see tweets related to many different topics, each triggering different emotions. When we run our algorithm, it filters through the same timeline that Lisa scrolls through and classifies all of the tweets by category. After Lisa's done using Twitter, she will be prompted to input her emotions regarding the top 5 most frequent topics she saw, which would take no more than 30 seconds. Over time, SoQuo will have enough data on Lisa to be able to predict her most probable emotions based on the topics on her Twitter feed. It can also inform her before she opens Twitter about the presence of any topics that she has indicated affected her previously. For transparency, we also have a feature called How Do We Know This, which will show Lisa how we came to any conclusions about her predicted emotions and the topics extracted from her timeline. We used Flutter to implement the UI in our Figma mockups as code in a mobile app. Eventually, a user will be able to log into SoQuo through Twitter to see how the app evaluates their timeline. The UI so far is very basic, but we would add more interactivity and animations to make it intuitive from a user's perspective.
Twitter's own sensitive content warning may seem similar to SoQuo's, but Twitter's warnings are usually generalized and are related to violence or gruesome images, whereas our warnings and insights are personalized and catered solely to the user. For example, a post about dieting may not be considered sensitive content to Twitter, but it could negatively affect someone who's recovering from an eating disorder, and SoQuo would be sure to warn them beforehand.
Now let's consider how SoQuo affects Lisa. After using it for several weeks, SoQuo determines that politics-related tweets tend to trigger Lisa's anxiety. Every morning, she checks SoQuo before opening Twitter. If Lisa wakes up feeling anxious and SoQuo warns her about a high number of tweets about politics, she'll make sure she's in the right headspace before using social media, which would prevent her anxiety attacks and low moods.
While our app currently only supports Twitter, our future goal is to interface or partner with several different social media sites, such as Instagram and Facebook. This would require the development of convolutional neural networks for image analysis. Another would be to analyze a user's social network through their followers, followings, likes, or retweets, and whether their social circle has an effect on their mental health. People often acknowledge the effect that social media has on their mental health and think that the only solution is to delete it. However, this does not need to be the case. By using an app like SoQuo, your mental health while still enjoying all the benefits of social media sites, remaining connected with others. So this is our amazing team, and we'd like to thank our TA and our mentors for making our vision a reality. We'd also like to thank Amii for inviting us to this virtual to allow us to present our idea on this platform. We'd like, as well as our other partners, for this great opportunity. Thank you so much for listening, and yeah, I guess we can take a few questions now.
Fantastic. I love that the conversation that segued from our initial conversation has perfectly segued into something like this. So the solution isn't to delete the social media, but it's to acquire this technology. So thank you. Please give a round of applause to Team SoQuo. Fantastic. And now we can take some questions if anybody has them. But I guess it's kind of worth talking a little bit more about the AI4Good Lab. Can you tell us a little bit more about what that experience was for you going through that?
First, if anyone else wants to take it. Honestly, it was an amazing experience. Started off with like 4 weeks of kind of just like very fast-paced learning about different concepts, how to apply them, and like the background behind them. So we started off with like math, and then slowly kind of transitioned to like more difficult things such as like neural networks, convolutional neural networks. But yeah, honestly, it is a bit overwhelming at times because it's so much information, but it's like so worth it because we learned so much in so little time, and we got to then after those 4 weeks of learning, like apply all of the things we learned in our own model for 3 weeks. So it was kind of just us learning how to apply everything we learned and having this like great opportunity to like really create something that we cared about. And there was like no restrictions. It was really like the world is your oyster kind of thing. Like you just do whatever you want. And it was just, yeah, it was an amazing opportunity. And if anyone wants to elaborate, go ahead.
Yeah, I would that I guess this was like my first introduction to AI, and it was a very good introduction because it like started at the beginning, and by the end I was making something of mine using AI, which I didn't expect that in like 7 to 8 weeks. But yeah, it was fast, but like now that it's over, I'm like, I want to go back. I want to do it all over again. It was an opportunity of a lifetime. I'll probably remember all the lessons I learned for a very long time. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And just to add on to that real quick, about the fast-paced stuff, it's like, it is fast-paced, but like the community we had for the AI4Good Lab was amazing. Like all of the mentors, all of the TAs, actually all of the participants as well. I have so many friends that we just like have group chats and study together, and just like, it was such a supportive environment, and it was such an excellent like introduction to AI, because you didn't feel stupid if you didn't get something. You just felt comfortable enough to like actually ask and be like, can you please clarify this? Can you? And everyone was so willing to help and like accommodate you in any way. And it was just honestly a great experience.
Awesome. Right. Thanks so much for sharing that. That helps, for anybody out there interested or have been previously interested in AI4Good Lab, there's good proof that you should apply maybe next time. So great. Oh, I see. We have a Russ with a question. So let me see if I could add you, Russ, to the stage. Let's see if this breaks the meetup, but I'm hoping it won't. Okay. So Russ, you should be able to broadcast. You should be on stage right now.
Cool. It's the first time I've been on this platform. It's very exciting.
There you go. There you are.
You can all hear me, right? That was a wonderful presentation, a wonderful application. I really liked it. Will every user start afresh, or you have warm starts? Like if you describe yourself as a 23-year-old female who has college graduated, will you say, well, this is my priors, and I'll start with this set of issues? Or we have warm starts, or are you going to have every user start afresh? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. We go back and forth a lot on this question, actually, because like as a machine learning model, it would be so much easier if we had like a warm-up start. If like she could like tell us her triggering topics like before, like when she started. Like a lot of AI applications right now, like news channels especially, like I noticed like when you're signing up, they're like, okay, which topics do you want to see? And they cater to that, and your AI kind of specifies. But we were thinking like the point of our app is to tell her her triggers that she might not know. So I don't know how we're gonna do this. Essentially, right now, the idea is that it's like no starts, and like it's just going in straight. Everyone like has it's like it hasn't learned anything yet, but and then it learns every week. Like it updates by what you've selected. It just goes through and scans your Twitter feed and gives you the topics, and then you associate the emotions. That's kind of how it's working right now. But yeah, we're in the middle of this. We're considering this as a team if we want to do it with a little bit of a warm up, in the sense that she tells us what she thinks triggers her, and then we can tell her, oh, maybe these trigger you too. Yeah,
and just to clarify about that just a little bit, we were kind of thinking of going the direction of like similar mental health apps. Like there's an app called Reflectly, which is kind of like a journal AI app, and it also like it doesn't use social media, but it lets you input your daily like logs and stuff, and it tracks over time and finds patterns. And for that, they do have like a minimum input. Like you have to be consistent 5 days, and then it starts predicting for you. So it's kind of, I think that's the direction we're thinking of going, because then we'd have like a bit of information about the specific person themselves and kind of form a model around them. So it's like catered to each person.
Okay. Makes sense. Thank you.
Great. Yeah, Russ, I imagine that we can just keep you on stage here for continued interaction. But anyway, please give one final round of applause for Team SoQuo. Thanks so much for your time. And we're happy to welcome up next our second presentation from Team Narrative. So we have Jennifer, we have Katie, we have Kimia. Welcome to the stage. I hope you're doing well. Russ, I'm gonna just stop your video for now.
Thank you.
But please come back.
Can you guys see the screen?
Yeah, looking good.
Hello everyone, welcome to the narrative presentation. Let's go back to when you wanted to get your first COVID vaccine. You might have wondered how bad the side effects would be for you or which ones you were more likely to have. It's hard to measure how much side effects like soreness or drowsiness affect someone. But the difference between a 15-minute nap or sleeping all day long is significant. When you're wondering about the side effects of medication, there is often an overwhelming amount of things to look through, whether that's on a package insert in the box of your medications or a long list of side effects you might find online. Drug reviews play a significant role in providing crucial medical care information for both healthcare professionals and consumers. Our project here aims to determine the impact of side effects by analyzing these reviews. Birth control and depression are the most common conditions amongst patients in our dataset. These medications can have significant side effects that are difficult to measure. So, people who are more vulnerable to side effects were the ones we were more focused to help in this project. Our goal here is to help you understand the severity of medication side effects to live your best life. Now I'm going to pass it to Katie for some information on our dataset.
Thanks, Kimia. So we use the UCI drug review dataset that shows drug reviews submitted in English on drugs.com from different patients. And this only medications with over 200 reviews were considered as we wanted to have a good sample. So our idea with our technical model is that we're not trying to replace the doctor. We aim to assist them in their work so that they can get a second opinion. So our patients can also use this tool in order to get a rough direction. Our model takes patients' words as input to classify text into medical conditions. First comes data pre-processing. It includes data cleaning, data mapping, since we need to use classifiers. The nominal categorical data will need to be replaced with ordinal categorical data. Then we clean the text by removing stop words, stemming, and vectorize, since classification models need to work on numbers and not words. TF-IDF is a popular way to vectorize. Then we went classification models on the vector. We tried random forest, decision tree, and SGD among many choices. In the end, we convert integer results to conditions. And now I'm going to walk through another model. So we wanted to see how we could expand on this to help people. And our main goal was to see how does sentiment and side effects affect the review. Here's a high-level diagram of what our model looks like, and now we'll take a closer look at each part. In order to gauge the severity of side effects, we first needed to identify them, and we did that through topic modeling. For instance, heart beats faster and elevated pulse would be grouped under the same side effect, so we can cluster these together. We can then label reviews using multi-label classification, as somebody can mention more than one side effect. Let's look at feature engineering now. And this was by far the most complicated part of our model by far. We originally wanted to use the domain-specific BioBERT to create our word embeddings, but we realized that it was a very hard model to train because of the large amounts of data and time required. So we chose Doc2Vec because we wanted to still preserve semantics and meaningful relations. And so, however, if a word didn't appear in the training data, there's no vector for it. So we can capture this in our other features. We used topic tags that came with the data set, as well as sentiment analysis. So the biggest thing affecting the accuracy of sentiment analysis was the inclusion of negative reviews about other irrelevant medications. So we chose to remove those sentences and then analyze with Vader. Here's an example of the sentiment text filtering algorithm we implemented on a review for Abilify rated 10 out of 10. So as you can see, the accuracy increases when we filter out the irrelevant sentences. And that's what we aim to do because it makes it a lot more accurate. And so next we have our model. How are we going to get our results based on our features? And so we want to predict the rating, and we chose linear regression because although more accurate methods exist, it is definitely the most interpretable. We recognize that interpretability is important in creating ethical and equitable AI systems because explainability helps us examine error. In an application that's dedicated to patient transparency, letting people know more about their medical conditions, that's what we really aim to do. We used a SHAP explainer to analyze our linear model and see what effect each feature has on the rating prediction. And now let's see how this applies to our demo.
Now I'm going to watch here. Search side effect will allow users to type a drug name and get some information on that specific drug. Here, I'll search for citalopram, and we will have a list of side effects, their severity, and frequency. We also have the option of looking at the word cloud of this drug's reviews. The second feature explains the model that we use. Keeping with our idea of transparency, we wanted users to be able to understand where these suggestions are coming from. The last feature that I'm going to talk about is the possible future work. As you can see here, we have a narrative virtual assistant that allows users to type their symptoms and get some prediction on their condition.
So we're aware that there are possible problems narrative might have to overcome if we want to predict a condition or suggesting a drug using an algorithm. It might end up frightening someone with a mild issue, and suggesting the wrong drug to use could cause some severe health issues as well. So currently, we're not trying to diagnose people or to recommend any medications since we're not medically qualified to do so. And it could be risky, but we definitely are considering and are hoping to work more on this aspect under the supervision of healthcare professionals with more accurate and reliable data sets in the future. The other difficulty that we face for this future work is the difference between a sign and a symptom. A sign is an objective, observable phenomenon that can't be identified by anyone else, while a symptom is a subjective experience that can't be identified by anyone else, while a sign can be. So because our model is not extremely accurate in detecting the differences between signs and symptoms currently, we suggest always to ask a healthcare professional, but in future, we really hope to be able to improve this aspect of our model. And while we did more research and talked with some pharmacy students, we figured out that side effects of different drugs on each other is another issue that we should consider as well. For now, we think that suggesting over-the-counter medications would be the only option that we have, but in future, with the aid of better data sets and with healthcare professionals, we really hope to successfully detect any symptoms that are side effects of multiple drug uses, but with our current resources and time frame, it just wasn't possible. We would like to emphasize that our app is not a replacement for doctors or medical professionals. Always go to them first for help if you're ill or if you're injured. We really aim to target our product towards patients who use or will need to use medications as a way to be more informed about their prescriptions and how it compares to others. So narrative can also help healthcare professionals. If they have a patient who is allergic to a certain ingredient in a drug, they can search for another drug that does a similar thing, but without that certain ingredient. There are already some existing works that's similar to narrative, one of them being drugs.com. So similarly to us, their website provides drugs names as well as their side effects. But unfortunately, what they don't have is the probability of each user experiencing each side effect, nor the side effects of multiple drugs on each other. Another website is sideeffects.embl.de. They list each drug as well as how common each side effect is, but what they're missing is the data for many drugs, and the data that they do use is at least 10 years old, so some of the information may be outdated by now. So with more time and better resources, we truly believe that narrative can help many people with their medications and symptoms and increase one's quality of life. Of course, we would like to thank AI4Good Lab, all our mentors and TAs for helping us through this project. We'd also like to thank Amii for allowing us to come here and present our project to everyone. And thank you everyone for listening. If there are any questions, we'd be happy to take them.
Fantastic. A round of applause for Team Narrative. Yes, as mentioned, if anybody has any questions, feel free to put it in the Q&A box. I'm happy to read out any questions that are typed out, or in the chat is fine as well. Russ, you can. I think you have the ability to mute and unmute, so feel free to pop on if you have any questions.
Again, wonderful, wonderful idea. It sounds very exciting to have a system that can be that helpful for the patients. What information are you collecting about the individual patient to help decide whether this patient will get that side effect?
Great question. So we are taking user reviews from an online drug review website. That was what the UCIdrugs.com data set was based on. And so this is information that was already out there. There is a pretty significant privacy consideration to take into account because not only do natural language reviews on medication reveal a lot about the patient's medical condition, but it also reveals a lot about, how they're dealing with it. And so the way we approached it first was just by not collecting any data at all. In our demo, our website, it just had, this side effect, other people reviewed it as more severe, and we didn't try and collect any user data because of this privacy concern. I think that if we were to get new data from people typing their own reviews in and trying to guess side effects from that, we would have to take a very close look at how we protect that data and how we use it for future reviews. Thank you for your question. That's definitely a great thing to consider.
Will you indicate, for example, that this drug affects women this way and men a different way? And now you don't ask the individual what their gender is, but they know what it is, and they can use that to decide how relevant it is.
Definitely a great idea. In terms of what our data set had, we actually didn't have any gender or any other demographic information. It was just anonymous reviews posted on a website. And I think that was why a lot of them were quite honest, because patients felt more comfortable talking about their experiences if they knew that their data wasn't being collected.
It's nice seeing you thought about these very important issues. It's great. Thank you very much.
Questions?
Also, please, if you have a website, please do send us the link through the chat for all the participants, and so we can peruse your website afterwards. So, and I guess this goes for a team Soco who already presented. But if there aren't any other questions, please give one final round of applause to Team Narrative. Thank you for sharing your expertise and your time, and we can move forward to before we move into the networking. We can move finally and welcome our third presentation, and our presenting team, is a team PhysiFeedback featuring Emily, Hadiya, and Aish. So please join me on stage, and we can get you set up as soon as possible.
All right. Hi, everyone, and thanks for having us here today. We're PhysiFeedback, and we're here to present a tool for transforming the at-home physiotherapy experience. So I'll ask everyone to give a thumbs up in the chat if this story sounds familiar to you. You go to a physiotherapist for some problem, and they send you home with some stick figure drawings of a few exercises that are supposed to help you get better. So you try to do the exercises on your own, but you can't exactly remember how to do them. And those stick figure drawings aren't that helpful. So you eventually go back to your physiotherapist because your problem isn't getting any better, and the cycle continues. Does that sound familiar to anyone? Yeah, so quite a few of you, and I'm sure there are others out there, because a study published in Physiotherapy Canada estimates that more than 4 million Canadians use physiotherapy annually. And physiotherapy is so common because it can be used to manage or treat a wide range of conditions, including athletic injuries, post-surgical recovery, autoimmune disorders, repetitive strain injury, and neurodegenerative disorders, just to name a few. And the examples listed on screen are nowhere near exhaustive, but they demonstrate the wide variety of conditions and people who benefit from physiotherapy and explain why so many Canadians are using it. Physiotherapy is a key component of treatment plans for many conditions because of the potential to improve mobility and avoid further deterioration. For example, literature states that doing exercises targeted for arthritis can reduce pain, maintain mobility, and promote independence, which all ultimately improve quality of life. It's said that patient compliance is the final frontier in medicine. Even if every preceding step is in place for a patient to get better, they simply won't if they're not complying with their prescribed treatment. And so to better understand the magnitude of this issue in the context of physiotherapy, we conducted a study and spoke to experienced physiotherapists. 68% of our survey respondents reported that they don't follow their prescribed exercise regimen. And when we further investigated why this is the case, one really common answer we found from patients and clinicians was the inability of the patient to visualize themselves performing their exercises and getting real-time feedback about their performance when they're doing their exercises at home. And incorrect form when performing exercises can limit the amount of progress that an individual can make, and it can even result in injury. And this is a really big problem since most of the work that goes into physiotherapy must be done by the patient outside of the clinic and without supervision. So it's up to the patient to make sure that they're doing their exercises correctly, which is a difficult task without the appropriate tools. We looked at apps that currently exist to help physio patients do their exercises. Most of the apps that we came across offer progress tracking via self-reported outcomes, exercise reminders, and exercising and stretching video libraries. Some apps allow clinicians to set reminders and create customizable exercise programs for the clinician to be actively involved in their patient's physiotherapy experience outside of the clinic. And although these features are important for compliance, they don't ensure that the user is performing the exercises correctly. So to address this gap, our application has real-time pose tracking features that allow users to visualize themselves as they perform their exercises and leverages AI to provide real-time feedback, similar to during their physiotherapy appointment with their physiotherapist. We found that only BlueJay PT uses AI in its application to measure range of motion, but this offering is only available during telehealth meetings, so the patient can't actually use this feature on their own. And real-time post tracking does exist in some workout apps, but these support fitness goals rather than promoting recovery for people who have conditions that impact their mobility. So to summarize, we identified a gap in the market for an app that leverages AI to provide real-time movement tracking to aid physiotherapy patients from doing their exercises properly. And this restricts millions of people across Canada and worldwide from reaping the potential benefits that physiotherapy has to offer. Having identified this gap, our team combined our expertise in medical sciences, cognitive systems, and software development to create an application that addresses the issue. And so our solution for the identified gap is PhysiFeedback. It's an innovative solution that considers the barriers that stand between patients and perform the exercises that are crucial to maintaining their mobility outside of the clinic. Our unique insight into this problem allowed us to implement a solution that not only helps individuals visualize themselves performing the exercise, but it also allows them to receive quantitative metric feedback that can be used at their physiotherapy appointments. These real-time metrics can inform the individual on their form so they can correct themselves and perform the exercise according to the standards set by their physiotherapist. Through its use, PhysiFeedback enables physiotherapy patients to regain mobility, thus improving their quality of life.
So after realizing our vision, we got to work. First, we picked 5 common physiotherapy exercises to work with: the lateral leg raise, shoulder flexion, bridge, shoulder press, and a hamstring stretch. Since there were no existing image datasets available online with what we needed, we created our own dataset. We started the data collection by finding images online, as well as taking photos of ourselves, friends, and family doing the exercises. For each pose, we collected photos of the resting pose and the stretching pose. So, for example, for shoulder flexion, if I was going to do the pose with my hand, I would just be starting at resting pose with my shoulder all the way down, and then I would lift it all the way up, and that would be the stretching pose for shoulder flexion. After we collected the images, they were reviewed by a kinesiologist to ensure that our training data upheld proper form and range of motion. And then we removed the improper poses. We then augmented the data to make our model more robust to differences in pose orientation and video quality. So this involved like different kinds of rotation, cutting off parts of the image, the addition of noise. And lastly, we then ran these images through the MediaPipe Pose Tracking API, which is a publicly available API, in order to quantify pose information into 33 landscapes for each pose on the human body. We removed all the improperly tracked images, and then we used this to train the K-nearest neighbors classification model for each exercise included in the prototype. So we tested it, and the model could recognize the resting and the stretching position for each exercise. So using our model, we could extrapolate metrics like rep count and rep time, as well as others. So now that I've shown you what we did during the AI4Good Lab, let's see the prototype in action. The first thing you need to do is you select the desired exercise in the drop-down menu. Then you just step back from the camera so your full body's in the shot, like me over there. I started with shoulder press. The metrics start on the bottom left. As you progress through the reps, the app gives you encouraging messages to motivate you. So when the rep count is going to hit 10, it's going to say, hey, you did a good job. Do you want to move on to the next exercise? Next, we have the range of motion metric. So this indicates your mobility on the left and right side in real time as you move along. For shoulder flexion, you can see the corresponding bar goes from 0 to 100% as my arm moves from down to up. So we're measuring the range of motion of each shoulder. The average range of motion is also provided, which gives you an idea of the average mobility of different joints. This metric is valuable because it's a key indicator of mobility and progress when you're doing physiotherapy treatment. You want to become more mobile over time. The rep counter keeps track of how many times you've done the exercise so you can focus on doing it correctly instead of keeping count. I've lost count many times. The rep counter keeps track of how long it takes you to complete each rep. It also gives you an average for all the reps you've completed so far. And in general, it's useful because it indicates how many reps you can do before you start struggling and maybe it takes you a little longer to complete them near the end. And then when you're done with an exercise, you can simply select a new exercise in the drop-down menu and the metrics will reset automatically. Okay, so our vision for PhysiFeedback includes exercise analytics, such as the mockup we have here, which summarize your progress over time. You can select which exercise you want to see data for, and the analytics dashboard will populate with your history of average range of motion, rep count, rep time, to give you a more long-term idea of how you're improving over time. And this information can also be shared with your physiotherapist, and it will help motivate you to continue improving and providing insight on your struggle as a patient.
Individuals, we believe it's really important to have some goals to set. So for short-term goals, we really want to start off with having some sort of storage system. And this is so that when each time the user visits our website, they don't have to keep track of their own progress and we can keep track of it for them. So it's like kind of having their own physio companion on the go. In terms of storage system, we also hope that
Okay, I think Aish is cutting off. I'll just continue.
Sorry.
So the storage system.
Yeah, you could go ahead. I'm having some connection problems.
Okay, no worries. So basically we want to save data for each user so that we can then generate those useful user analytics that I was kind of showing in the vision before. We need to save that data to have that long-term data to give them that useful information. It'll also help the user feel like they can keep track of their progress over time rather than having to take care of it themselves. So once that's implemented, we can go to the next goal, which is to run a pilot study to see how functional the application is and see what shortcomings they may have, especially when we run it with patients that are doing physiotherapy with their own specific needs that we can't necessarily anticipate. The results of this pilot study will inform us of our next steps. We anticipate one of the shortcomings of the applications will be a limited data set. Therefore, in the near future, we hope to strengthen that data set by adding more images and samples of the different exercises we offer, as well as adding more exercises to the application, since currently we just have 5. Once we have a strong data set, we'd like to improve the current features as well as add new features. As mentioned before, once the storage system is implemented, we'd like to use that saved user data to run advanced analytics and perhaps some predictive modeling using AI. For example, using that data available to predict user progress and range of motion over the coming days or weeks. So our most immediate roadblock is that, one, of course, to gather the large data sets, and then to improve our AI, we also need access to more computing power, such as with AWS servers. When we initially adopted the idea of PhysiFeedback, we created a survey to assess whether people would prefer a mobile or a web application. And 60% of respondents wanted a mobile application, but unfortunately, due to time constraints, we started off with a web application for the AI4Good Lab. However, we do want to implement a mobile app in the future, since that would be a lot more convenient for positioning when you're doing these exercises and taking with you. So it's like really on the go and not just like on your laptop. Overall, we're very excited about the future of PhysiFeedback and the difference it will make in the lives of many. So thank you for listening. We hope you join our vision for transforming the at-home physiotherapy experience. So you can actually take that demo we just showed you for a spin. You can go to physiFeedback.herokuapp.com. I think one of us can post it in the chat if you want to check it out. We're just getting started, and we really appreciate the support of the AI4Good Lab, the AI and tech community, and Amii, just all the support we've gotten to make PhysiFeedback happen. We'd love to hear from you, and so don't hesitate to swing by our table with your insights. Thank you for having us. We can take questions now.
Nice. Yes, please. If anybody has any questions, please ask away. I see Russ Greiner popping on. Hello, Russ.
Oh, you're muted.
Here, I'll unmute you, Russ.
Good. Sorry about that. Great tool. I definitely want to try it out. I look forward to trying it on your website. You're talking about doing some diagnostics, saying that I now think I know what the, here's a range of motions. It's not far enough. You can extend it. What about prognosis? I see this is too hard for you. Could you say, well, maybe the right thing to do is not this motion, but maybe just this motion, and actually tell the users, here's how to get better. Doing what a physical therapist would do, but trying to capture the information that that person has access to, and so you could emulate what she was doing to help you out. Is that the realm of possibility, or is that 3 levels downstream?
We actually did have quite a few discussions about that, because we acknowledge that depending on the person's condition, maybe having an 100% range of motion isn't achievable or isn't necessarily like what they need for their age and what they're doing in their life. But one thing we're hoping is that with the goal setting feature, then they can use the information that they've been given by their physiotherapist saying, now we want you to have even a 30% range of motion, and then they know that they're actually not trying to achieve 100% range of motion, but the physiotherapist has given them another target. So we were thinking of sort of using the goal setting feature or some of our other features as a way to incorporate a more personalized take on physiotherapy, as opposed to just assuming that everyone wants 100% range of motion for every activity.
Cool. Another sort of minor just thought. Obviously, this is a private video you're doing yourself, but would it be possible to have an opt-in? If you push a button, then it gets sent to your physiotherapist. You can see what you did on different days, or is that too invasive of privacy?
I think that's, oh yeah,
go ahead.
I was just going to say that's definitely something that we had in mind when we created the application, because a lot of times when you go into the physiotherapist, it's just like they're going to honor your word if you did it or not. But this way, your physiotherapist can actually see that you did what you were told to do, and they can also correct your form as you're doing it. So say you're doing the exercises and they're like, oh, it's a bit off. They can correct you and make sure that when you go back for your next at-home exercise prescription, you're doing it correctly. So this way, it's not just, you're not only getting corrective feedback as you're doing them at home, but when you go to your physiotherapist again, they'll improve it if needed.
Yeah, one of the, I think the main visions we have is it should fill the gap between that next physio appointment as much as possible. Obviously, it would be great if it you could have an AI replace your physiotherapist, but having that gap of support, yeah, having that gap, that gap of support when you're at home. And then I often find that 5 days after I went to my physio, I feel like my posture is getting worse and I'm like doing the poses more and more wrong, but I can't quite remember because my memory isn't that visual, et cetera, et cetera. So like in terms of maintaining that and like maintaining that standard that the physio set for you, like that would be one of like the main goals for this tool. Especially going forward, we would like it to be a tool that like we could, you know, provide to physiotherapists to then give to their patients and thus have that like bilateral communication throughout their like physio journey.
Awesome. We have a question in the chat from Haley, who says, "So cool. Could this be used beyond the scope of physiotherapy, like for day-to-day working out, or are there limitations that would make this not be recommended for daily use?"
So for working out, there are definitely apps out there. So when we were looking, when we're just doing like some market research, there are apps out there that do exactly this, but for workouts. We were trying to fill the gap in for physiotherapy because there are currently no apps that do this for the purpose of physiotherapy. We've had people ask us before from the past demo if like we could use this for like dancing, which is very interesting, but I think it would be very complicated as the movements would be faster. Right now, our models focused on more slower and precise movements. So it'd be definitely interesting to see how you would implement like a workout app or a dancing app.
I would also add that like, I think like once that our technology and like our AI model is a lot stronger, we could definitely like expand it into different kinds of avenues, because I like it's a lot of pose recognition and like understanding where you're like, it's very universalizable in that sense. I think one of the values of like having it for physiotherapy is because like people who want to work out can use the workout apps, but for physiotherapy patients, like I personally have tried to use many workout apps to help me, but like I don't need the workout app to tell me to like go harder like until I injure myself doing physiotherapy. Like it's almost like the gap is more on the physiotherapy side than the workout. There's definitely lots of apps out there, but yeah.
Excellent. Haley, I'm just always losing count. Yeah, aren't we all? Like it's like that was, I think, a very relatable thing for everyone. So, if anybody, you know, we can keep this conversation going as well. So, but if there aren't any more questions at this moment, please join me to give a virtual round of applause to Team PhysiFeedback. Thanks so much for your time and expertise and for sharing with us this evening.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and so this sort of wraps up the presentation portion of the July AI Meetup and also the final meetup of the summer. We will be taking a break in August, so we will be seeing you all back at the meetup here in the fall. But in the meantime, you know, this meetup would not exist without the support of our community. So let's connect. If you have any questions about the meetup, or if you're interested in presenting at a future meetup, we'd love to hear from you. I will be around on the virtual floor, but you can also most likely find me in the Amii help desk table if you have any Amii related questions. But again, the meetup itself will be available on our YouTube page for future perusing. But we also encourage you to go on our YouTube page and view not only just the past meetups, but there are also lots of technical presentations from the AI seminars and the tea time talks that are happening at the University of Alberta, as well as other lectures and that we have hosted in the past. So lots of content there to explore. You can find our YouTube page on our website, amii.ca. But with that said, we do hope you stick around to network with the teams right now. We will see you again at the next meetup in September. But once again, thanks again to our presenters for sharing their time and expertise. And thank you, audience, for joining us today. So we wish you all the best in the coming months, and we'll see you on the networking floor. So bye for now.